Okay, so the Composite API is an enhanced form of the REST API, which executes a series of REST API requests in the single call. So basically, when any other system wants to send the data to the Salesforce system, they have to write the REST Apex class. I think all the techie people would be knowing about it. So whenever you are writing the REST resource class, at that moment you would be defining the URL mapping of that class, and using that URL mapping, external system can start sending the data into the Salesforce system, right? So over here, we will not write any piece of code over here. Without writing a single piece of code over here, external system still can able to send the data. So that is the enhanced feature of the Composite API. And this features is given by the Salesforce itself. So there are no any third parties involved over here. There are no managed package or unmanaged packages getting involved here. Okay. So let's suppose I wanted to send the data to the Salesforce using of the account data. So in the Salesforce, we have a many different objects: account object, contact object, opportunity, and many other custom objects, right? Now, if I wanted to send the data, now the question will be over here: only the single data this Composite API support, or the multiple objects data it can support over here, right? So over here, let's suppose if we have a parent data and the multiple child combination data over here, still my answer would be the yes. Composite API supports all the features of sending the multiple object data into the one shot. Okay, so I'll give you a few examples over here, and I'll give you the live demo over here through which you can able to see how without writing a single piece of code, account, contact, opportunity, all the data gets created into the Salesforce. Okay, so before we sending the data into the Salesforce, there is a most important steps is about the authentication, right? Everyone we know, before accessing any external system or any external system wanted to access the Salesforce system, we need to do the basic authentication over there, right? We will not talk more about the authentication over here because everyone's know how we do the authentication. Authentication is done by the connected app. So let me just give you the small example of connected app as well. Might be everyone would be knowing it. If it is not, then this might be also getting captured over here, will be getting covered over here. Let me just go to the app. So if I go to the Salesforce, if I search over here the app manager over here, in the app manager I have created one small connected app over here. You can see the name of test app, right? So let's say if I have created the connected, so here is the option of creating the new connected app. Okay, so let's suppose if I have created one test connected app over here. You can see the consumer key I have. You can see I have the consumer secret key has been generated over here when I created the connected app into this Salesforce. Again, this is a point and click only. There is a no code has been written over here. Okay. Now, once I had generated this, I can do the basic authentication to access or send the data to the Salesforce. So there the anybody has any point?
Hi all, please mute. Nilesh, please mute.
Thank you, Ani.
Sorry, Deepan, go
So
ahead.
yeah. So as we know, to do the authentication, we need the 5 basic parameters to access any system. After the authorization will come into the picture. The first steps is about the authentication, right? So the 5 different parameters are consumer key, another is a consumer secret key, another one is a username and password, and fifth one is the grant type. So let's say the Postman. We have the Postman app using which we do the authentication. If I open my Postman, let me just go to here. Yes. So here we see I had used the basic URL to authenticate with the Salesforce. Now where I had provided over here the client ID, which it got generated through the connected app into the Salesforce. This was the client secret, which also got generated through the Salesforce using the connected app. These are the username and password, and this is the grant type, which is the password. When you try to do the authentication with these 5 parameters, you will get generate the access token over here, which will allow you to authorize that particular Salesforce system. Using this access token, we will able to send the data to the Salesforce, right? Now over here, there are the QA also in this audience. So whenever they wanted to do the testing with the integration areas as well, without the postman also they can do, which is the another tool we have. We have the workbench, right? Using the workbench, the Salesforce, it's a Salesforce tool itself, right? So there are the no basic authentication is required. So now let me go to the workbench. Now let's say here is a workbench I have. That's all. Once I log in into the workbench, it is all set for my authentication, right? Now the what is the next step? I have to do the authorization. So I have to start sending the data to the Salesforce with the under the account and the contact, right? So let me go to the Salesforce once again. So let's say here we see the 19 records of the Salesforce under the account object, right? Now, if I wanted to start sending the data without writing a single piece of code, what will be your next step? What will be the JSON payload structure? So let me just put a JSON structure over here, and I'll show you what will be the endpoint URL, which you can directly start sending the data into the Salesforce. The one thing is the post method we have to use. Why? Because we are performing the create or the update operation into the Salesforce. That's why we are using the post method over here. Okay. Now I'm using the workbench tool over here. Let me just push this, post this payload over here. So in this payload, if you guys notice here it is written composite request. Okay. And under this composite request, there are different sub requests. So basically the feature of this composite API is in the single API call, you can do the multiple post, get, and all the CRUD operation in the single API call. That's the advantage of the composite API and without writing a single piece of code. So in this API, if I notice, I am doing the 3 different DML operation. So this is the first node. This is my first node, right? So let me just look at it. Here the method I have used the post over here. The next is the URL. URL is saying this is the account object. So S object is the account. So under the account object, I wanted to perform. Now there is a one more parameter called the reference ID. This reference ID, it's a unique which will define of that particular node, what is the unique ID of this particular transaction. So let's suppose in the single API call, if we are making the 5 sub requests, then all the 5 sub requests, the reference ID should be the unique. Okay. And why? Because let's suppose this is the account object. Now this same account object I wanted to reference into the contact object, right? Why? Because in the single API call, I'm going to create the account record and also the contact record. But in the contact record, I wanted to take this account with that contact, so that I'm going to use this reference ID. So whenever this records gets created into the Salesforce using this reference ID, this ref account will be referred to my account ID. So let's say here I'm creating the contact record. If you see, to link the contact record with the account record, I'm using that reference ID over here. And I am putting one annotation, which is at the rate. So this is the mandatory steps we need to provide when we are linking one record with another record in the single API call. Now, if you see, this node is going to get create my contact record. Now, if you see this particular node, then this node is going to create my opportunity record into the Salesforce, right? Now, let me just create one record. I will put Areya account as a sample name over here. These are the sample contact. These are the sample opportunity. Now here, the basic URL before the services, everyone would be knowing. My domain name would be coming over here, which is login.salesforce.com. So basically, whatever the my domain is there, the domain name would be coming if you are doing this authentication and authorization using the postman. But here we are using the workbench, which is directly authenticated with the Salesforce org. So I am directly using the endpoint URL over here. Now in the endpoint URL, I'll be adding one composite over here. Now, if you see, this is my endpoint URL. Now this is my payload structure. Okay. Now let me just execute it. I can see HTTP, it's a 200. Okay. Everything went perfectly because everything is showing me as a 201, the status code. Now let me go to the Salesforce org. If I refresh this account, we can see there are record has been created, but let me search for the Areya account. Here we go. I had clicked multiple times, so it has been created multiple times over here. But if you see this Areya account, here it's a contact record, here it's an opportunity record. So let me just open one contact record. You can see this contact record is linked with the Areya account also. So this is the advantage of using the Composite API. We did not have to write the single piece of code. If we are at any client place or when we are having the requirement of the integration to get the data into the Salesforce, just few questions we have to ask to the customer, like what type of data you wanted to say, account object, contact object, or any custom object. Just we need to work on building this payload, not a single piece of code we have to write over here. So this was the example I had. Okay, I think there is.
I wanted to just make sure that if you reiterate what's the purpose we are showing the whole thing. Once again, that would be a good idea. Purpose like the account, opportunity, and contact information. If you reiterate that once more, that would be a good idea.
Oh, you want me to reiterate once again to creating the data into the Salesforce?
The purpose. Reiterate the purpose. That's
Reiterate purpose.
Okay.
Yeah. Objective or purpose.
Okay, so the main objective over here is we did not have to get into the code level. We just have to understand the base requirement from the customers and what are all the attributes they are going to send the data into the Salesforce. We have to just prepare the payload for them and they can start sending the data. So the main purpose over here I can see is just a declarative way. We can define the REST API, Composite API class to the customers without taking much number of time of writing the Apex code in the backend from the dev team member, right? This is the advantage over here. And that is the main purpose, going with the declarative way, not with the programmatic way. That's the main purpose over here. Let me just show you one more example. Over here, there might be the multiple questions. Why? Because let's suppose in the single API call, if I am creating the multiple objects data over here, if it is getting failed in the one of the single post method. So let's say when I'm inserting the account and the contact is getting failed, then how we can roll back this transaction? Yes, we have that option of rollbacking the transaction as well. Let me just show you the one more example, which will help you to understand this more. And at last, I'll also give you the advantage and the consideration when we are getting this kind of requirement from the customers. So over here, you see, I have pasted one more payload over here, right? In this payload, you can see this is the post method. So basically this node is about the post method of creating the account into the system. This node is about getting the account record which recently has been inserted, and I wanted to fetch the ID of that record. Why? Because using that ID, I'm going to use into another API call, basically into the another sub request. So what are the different requests we have? We call it as a sub request into the system. So let's say these two sub requests are the two different contact records. So one account, and under the one account, there are two contacts. Now, what are the two contacts we have? We wanted to tag with the same account record, right? So we have used @reference ID, and that name also I wanted to refer, then I can do with this way mapping over here. Now, let's suppose when I'm executing this account and this get sub request is getting failed, how we will know that this is getting failed? So you can see here, I have used one more attribute, which is all or none. So basically this attributes is used to roll back the transaction if any error comes up in the whole transaction. So here you see, I have used the false. Let me make it a true. So this true means this attributes is gonna work in this single API call. If any of the sub request is getting failed in this single API transaction, then all the sub requests will be rolled back. So let me just try to populate one error. So let's say in this endpoint URL, I'm putting one space over here. Okay, so it means this URL is not correct. Now everything is fine, but one sub request it's invalid. Why? Because I have put a space over here. Let me execute this one. Okay, you can see the single API transaction is 200, okay, but the composite API over here, what are the sub request we have? It is rollback. None of them sub request has been processed over here. Why? Because we can see the transaction was rollback since another operation in the same transaction get failed. Why? Because I had put it over here one as a space over here. If I remove this space, let me create once again. So I'll update this name. Let's say SF composite account 15. Now under this 15 account, I have one sub request of account. Now I have two sub requests of creating the contact under the same account. Right? I'll click on the execute once again. Here you see everything went successfully. Why? Because I have removed that space and there are no errors. So this all or none, these attributes will help to identify if there are any errors, then the transaction should get rolled back. So the reason we use this tag as a true or false. Let me go to the Salesforce. If I go to the account, I can see SF composite 15 just now we have created. Now under this SF 15, if you see, I have created the two contact record. One is this and over here is the second one. Now you guys see, I have not written any single piece of code over here. Everything is a declarative. Just I had worked upon to prepare the payload structure. What are the data wanted to get reset into the Salesforce, right? So this is the main advantage using the composite APIs. Like the difference is definitely the Apex REST class. Like if you wanted to perform the complex DML operation using the Apex class, same thing we can achieve using the composite API. One account under the one contact, opportunity, case, and number of child record, we can insert it over here. If I see the advantage over here, the advantages are like it executes the series of REST API requests in the single API call. Now, the response of the body and the HTTP status of the request are written in the single response body. That's the advantage. This would reduce the time because we need to only construct the payload. We are not going to write a Apex class over here. So definitely it will reduce the time over here. The non-developer can also easily do the complex DML operation using the composite API. If any person is not having any kind of skill sets of writing a code, definitely they can do the integration using this composite API. Now, processing speed can be faster by collating the sub request over here. It improves the performance, no additional coding. It's a synchronized response. Now there are the multiple ways also in this composite. Like in the composite, we have a tree structure, we have a batch structure. There are the different n number of types we have into the composite, up to the what level of sub request we can handle it into the one single API call. So that would be the another topic I would say. Definitely I would ask everyone to explore that topic as well. Once you understood this topic, go and explore that areas as well. And this will upset up to the 5-level deep relationship. So let's say if I wanted to parent under one child, under that one more child, under that one more child, it will go up to the 5-level of deep relationships to do the DML operation performs over here. It can also do the get sub request, and result can be the input to the next sub request. So whatever the get we are doing it can be used into the another sub request as a post method. That's an advantage over here. So guys, these are the advantages I have talked about right now. Now the limits and the consideration when we are planning to use the composite API over here is the consideration is one thing only, like the reference ID, not in the response. So whenever we are getting the response over here, we'll be not having the reference ID over here, because the reference ID what we are using, it will not available over there. So that's a consideration we need to always take care. Another one is same reference ID cannot be used in the same transaction. So basically there will be the issue of duplicate reference ID, right? Now the same external ID record of the same object cannot be used in the same transaction. So these are the consideration I have explained you, and these are the advantage I have explained to you.